4, 3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of Rooftop Conversations with May. I have someone super incredible, super impressive, and someone I actually look up to myself, Monese. And I'm going to let her take it away with the biography because I've never met anyone with such an impressive resume, and she's only in her 20s. So, Neo, take it away.
Hi guys. Yes, I'm Monese. Yeah, thanks for the intro, May. It was impressively hard work. I would definitely say, and so I went to NYU, Tandon School of Engineering. In terms of my academic background, I got a BS in chemical and biomolecular engineering. Graduated around the same time as May, class of 2016. So yes, I'm 26. And then I went to Johns Hopkins and I got a master's in environmental engineering, which was great. I always dreamed of going to Johns Hopkins and I did it, which was pretty rad. In between, while I was trying to finish up my master's, I started working for Columbia University in the applied physics and applied mathematics department. And my experience in undergrad was pretty much like just get your studies done and then worry about getting experience later. So my first real big experience was working for Columbia, and then I started working for NASA. And with these two places, doing computer science, being a data scientist inside of the world of applied physics, more specifically the topic of the atmosphere and the oceans. So a lot of oceanic and atmospheric science using the world of data science. And that's my academic and kind of main work experience background. And in terms of right now, I live in downtown Brooklyn. Hey. Right? Okay. I love downtown.
Yeah, that's my neighborhood.
Right? So isn't it amazing?
It's the best. I love
building.
it.
Oh, that's my building.
That is your building. We're recording. So Neo and I live a couple blocks away from each other, but obviously due to quarantine, this is how we have to do everything. But I don't want to blow up your spot. This is where she lives, but Neo does also live in the same neighborhood as me.
My building is right here. It's one of those.
It's one of those.
Yeah, I can see it. Wow, it's so fun. That's downtown Brooklyn. You can't go far from home.
No.
Downtown Brooklyn, and we love it. Great.
I love it. Yeah.
Great.
And
that's a little about me.
So I think, Neo, you touched on it. We did meet in college. We met at NYU School of Engineering. Clearly, I'm not an engineer or in STEM, but Neo is a great example of what our institution at least does and things like that. So Neo, obviously, this is the question I ask all my guests. What was your first impression of me? And be as honest as you can be. I don't even care. You can be she's rude. I hate her, but go ahead.
No, I remember meeting you around Welcome Week.
Oh God.
A couple of weeks of NYU, and I didn't meet you, but I heard you.
Oh God.
I was like, what is that? What is that? And you were, I was thinking about you this morning as I was preparing. I was like, man, May, you had the energy of, I don't know if it was energy or cocaine. I don't know what that was. Maybe a little bit of both. But, I was like, May has all this energy and she's so out there. I just remember you being one of those people that didn't give a fuck. And that's why I wanted to be your friend, because you need some people like that on your team. People that aren't afraid to be themselves and very outspoken. Some people were like, oh no, May, she's a little bit too outspoken or too loud or maybe she's putting on an act. I was like, even if she's putting on an act, it's kind of like, okay, you're willing to be that way, to be outspoken with some people, which is like kind of the person you want when you're entering college, because college is such a nervous place, but you there was only two people, you and Malcolm.
Oh my
I
God.
love more than anything because you guys
Yeah.
were so bubbly and didn't give a fuck and willing to change course. My impression of you continued when you changed your course at NYU. And I was like, okay, are you doing something? Like, no, I've decided to go a new path. And I was like, that's brave. Are you sure you want to do this? And you were like, yeah, I'm going to be a lawyer. Are you sure? Like, girl, I'm going. I was like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Thank you.
It was great because some people's like, oh well, I have to stick with this. And look, you stuck to the world of it's still thoroughly challenging. I was
It
wondering
is.
why law, but you did it.
Thank you.
You are a lawyer now.
I'm a lawyer. Yeah.
What the hell?
As of Monday, April 20th, I am a licensed attorney in New York. But this is not me offering any services on this show. This is just a little background about me.
That's awesome.
But thank you so much, Leo. Wow, that's actually like a really big honor coming from someone like you. I do hold you to a high respect. I think the same way you came in with a very real energy, especially in a school. Like we went to Tandon back then; it was known as Polytechnic Institute of Technology. Poly Institute at NYU. And I think one of the biggest things like we noticed, especially as women going in there, was it was a lot of men. And I just wanted to ask about your experiences, like even like prior, like when you were still in like if you don't mind me mentioning where you're from, right? If it's okay, like what state. So you're from Wisconsin and like, starting from like your experiences there at home and then like why STEM? And then what was it like going in school where it was like 98% male? Like, how was that like, especially in being like a woman in a super male dominated field?
Well, why STEM? To answer that question, why STEM? It's, I pretty much didn't really have a choice. I chose a STEM field because I have STEM parents. And the rule was, we're not going to co-sign for you unless you just go for something STEM. That was it. And that was it. And sometimes, I like that. I like that hardcore, just like boom. At first, I didn't have any objections. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Because I know that STEM, there's jobs. There's always an opportunity to have a high-paying job. And the reason why my parents were so cut and dry about they won't co-sign for me, they won't give me their credit to get loans to come to school is because they're immigrants. And so generally speaking, there is a certain kind of era around being an immigrant inside of the United States. And you gotta come here and do something.
I know. I know that feeling. I understand that so well. I think as a child of immigrants,
right?
Yeah.
You're like, no, we came here from South Africa. We got all this time. We had to go through years of getting green card, years to get citizenship. We had to do something. And when I say that, they mean a skill that will be employable all the way through.
Yeah.
Because they're immigrants, so they don't have that white generational wealth. They just got here in 1996. That's not a lot of time to build wealth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With their own ventures, right? So that's why I chose the STEM field. I grew up STEM with STEM parents pretty much, and when I ended up coming into this field of chemical and biomolecular engineering, I didn't know really what I was in for. I knew I enjoyed the world of math and chemistry, and you just kind of make a choice. And then there was also the stipulation of my parents, which is like, got to be an engineer, or that's pretty much it, or something. Like you have to do something in that world. And so then I chose chemistry because I was fond of chemistry and math, and that's how I decided on that major. And they were like, you definitely better choose something in STEM if you're trying to leave Wisconsin and go to NYU. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah, and you gotta make the money back too. It's loans don't pay themselves. I definitely understand that. Like I'm still paying off my NYU loan till this day on top of my law school loan. So I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I decided on STEM.
Yeah. No, that's like I definitely understand that and relate to that, especially like I'm first generation here in this country as well. My parents. Okay. Well, and then that was we're gonna probably need to like fix that in post production. Well, I would leave it like this. Honestly, I love like the organic campiness of this show, and that's literally why I'm like in gym clothes as opposed to dressing up.
Totally.
But anyway, like I really relate to that. I think especially as I'm a child of immigrants as well. My parents came here in the late '80s, and for I'm only going to speak for Thai folks. I don't want to speak for all Asians because I don't think I'm a representative of every single Asian person. But for us, it's like be a doctor, be something that like will allow you to, like you said, create or start generational wealth. Right? It's like we're not coming in with generational wealth, but you're going to have to start it for the rest of the generations going forward. And not only that, but also like you said, like your parents have worked hard and the sacrifices they've taken to come to a brand new country. And like I think I and like a lot of like immigrants, like children of immigrants that I know, this is like a very real story, and it's a very common story that we all have, and it teaches you resiliency, grit, and a whole bunch of stuff. So, and you're kicking it, you're killing it in the STEM field. Like you're literally like the epitome of like you're the representative of what it is to be successful and to thrive in STEM from what I've seen. So this is it, like the manifestation of your parents' sacrifice. So this is amazing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
And like, so you said you do a lot of stuff with like you do environmental, oceanic, aerospace studies. And the biggest topic right now that we have going on is climate change. So how do you think like engineering or data sets and what you do right now will play a role in that? And what is your views on climate change? Like I would love to hear from a scientific view of the issue, especially like I want to go into politics. So I hear a lot of like the political and sociological aspects of climate change, but I want to hear from like a scientific STEM background about climate change and like all of that within like, it's a big topic right now.
Yeah, definitely. So, in terms of my work with data science with NASA and Columbia, basically what we've done is try to analyze historical trends. That's the best that we can do as data scientists. So, you're familiar with STEM, so I'll just give it to you like this. Hopefully, anybody else can catch along. You have a series of data, that's based off of years, right? So we looked at data that comes from the 70s all the way up until now. And when you look at, what kind of data am I talking about? Climatic data. So humidity, precipitation, hurricanes, anything that has to do with the environment and how it might have been affected over time. So there's many areas within the world of climate change that you can choose to focus on. But the thing that unites us all is that we're focusing on data within each sector. So we have the atmospheric scientists, the people that focus on the ocean, the people that focus on just land, so terrain, ecologists. There's data there, right? And when we can come together and sort of look at the trends within each section of the atmosphere and the climate, we notice that there has to be there's a correlation between the number of penguins that are dying or polar bears that are sort of kind of committing suicide in a way because it's too hot in their environments, the ice that's melting, and the climate in May, for example, in New York. It's been kind of fluctuating. There should be sort of a consistency, historically speaking, around each season. And you kind of notice, you definitely notice, sometimes in the fall of 2018 and 19, it was really hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Too hot.
Yeah.
Where you're like, the leaves should be falling, but they're not. And I learned in elementary school that leaves fall in the fall, and it's fall, and it's
where are they coming? Yeah,
exactly. So there's many ways to there's many ways to approach the climate, and I think the best way to understand it is that we're just normal people, pretty much just hired to look at data that's coming from sensors and satellites somewhere else. We we put this data to an image. We visualize the data in terms of a graph to see that a trend where maybe there's a exponential trend in terms of the temperature increasing over 20 years. Usually you want to do like 10 to 20 years, right? Look at 20 years. Look at 2020 versus 2000 to 2020, and you'll see that there's a maybe there's an exponential increase in how the temperature has changed, right? And so from there, we visualize the data. Then we're able to come to people like you, law individuals that are involved with politics and policy, and say, hey, climate policy people or energy policy. These are lawyers that are fighting using our data to pass laws to mitigate climate change. So we present the data, and then the scientists then work with policy to make laws to decrease. So there's definitely a connection between law actually and the world of climate, because without law and the lawyers and litigation, laws can't be passed for regulations to change. Because what are we going to do? We can only just tell you, oh yeah, it's been changing, but unless these lawyers and people push for law regulation, it's just data.
But then I think vice versa. I think policy, government, and law do also work with STEM, because I feel like we see, even like with the current administration, where we have numbers here that show a story, that show a picture, that show a certain image, but you have people that can do whatever they want with that data, whether they want to fix climate change, whether they want to put out certain regulations, whether they want to do that. So I think it's like for people in the policy field, we're not going to be able to take a step. It's like chess, right? When in policy, it's like every move is strategic, but like, how do we know which move to take if we don't have the numbers, if we don't have the story that the STEM folks are putting on for us to know, and like to make that right move, to make those right steps for the constituency that we have, the people that we represent. So I think, like, again, we definitely, like, they talk about this a lot with like at TAN, and it's like how STEM plays such an important role in our lives, like not just with like math and like with medicine, but just even what you're doing here with like data science. It's so important, and how it informs our policy going for anything, and I think that's amazing work that you do.
It's cool work. I mean, I really love when policy and science, like data science, merge, because when I learned that in masters, I was like, yeah, it's true. Regulations. We're like, oh, the climate is changing, and yeah, but we have to regulate it. There have to be some sort of. That's why I've always found law to be interesting, because it regulates behavior, right? Criminal law, even civil law. It's like you're regulating human behavior, or even just on the basis of like what is just.
Yeah, definitely.
At what point are your individual choices affecting the rest of us?
Yeah, and you see that, and we see that here even with like COVID-19, like where a lot of it's like individual choices. You see here with like having to put on a mask versus like not putting on a mask, or like having to keep 6 feet apart from people and staying inside versus not. And like you see a lot, like, and regulations have to be put in by the government for like the greater good, whatever that may entail. So and you talk a lot about like why this is so important, using these mechanics of data science to, like you said, have a workable career, have something that's employable, have a skill set that can be used for something as big as solving climate change, as great as influencing policy. So I see that you're running a Python boot camp, and you're doing this like no charge. You're opening it up to a wide variety of people, not just people in STEM or people with a certain degree, but this is marketed as a very accessible, resource for everybody. So tell me about the motivation behind that, and like why run this Python boot camp? Why take your energy and your free time to run such a great resource for everybody?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I was inspired to run the boot, to do something this summer related to a class. I didn't know what it was going to be. It was It was either going to be physics or something, or some sort of class for lots of people. And then COVID happened, and it was still like I wanted to eventually run a class to help people, but I recognized that I was actually talking to one of my friends who she just feels like there's not a second chance for her. And her story is very particular. Like, didn't go to college, has a child, this child, it's like there's so many barriers, I guess. And of course, we all have our individual choices. We're not knocking you, and I'm not saying like we're not talking about her choices. We're just talking about we're dealing with a person who understands she's made choices, understands she has the consequences of no degree and a child because of the choices she's made, but she wants to try again. She wants to try to make money. She doesn't want to just have to be stuck inside of an impoverished situation because of the choices of her past. She wants to say, okay, given the fact of my choices in my past, but what can I do? I want to still learn. And when she said that, I was like, you want to still learn? Okay. That means you can be taught. That means there's other people out there like you, probably, who are in a situation where they want a second chance, or they're in a situation where they're stay-at-home moms and they want to be more than just a stay-at-home mom, and there's nothing wrong with being just a stay-at-home mom, but they want to learn a skill within STEM because they're interested in it. And they just haven't had a teacher to be patient with them or anything like that. On the flip side, so you have the people that don't have a formal education of any kind or a formal engineering education. The other ones are people that have an engineering or math, some sort of mathy science background, that want to learn it because they never learned it in undergrad. We had to learn MATLAB to graduate from NYU Tandon, So that was the rule, but you didn't have to learn Java, C++, Python, all these other things in order to move forward. But the scientists are the ones that maybe are interested in a career change, or maybe interested in boosting their resume, getting a promotion, getting more money, or just freelancing on the side because they don't like their job. So there's so many options here, and I just decided really why I wanted to do this, even given these two groups, is to give people the kind of freedom that I have, the kind of lifestyle that I have being a coder, which is work from home even when COVID is over. I've been working from home for like 2 years. I don't even know. Like, it's very
that's a goal.
Okay, it's like, why not be on the beach, sipping on your drink, that's my dream. And I feel like there's got to be other people. I mean, unless you have a specific client to client facing where like you're solving, like as an attorney, being there physically with your client is necessary, but if you aren't involved in a field that requires that one-to-one human counsel, you're a counsel. That's what you are. I'm not a lawyer. I want to be a computer scientist, and like I'm not a lawyer because I don't really like dealing with people.
Yeah, that's most of the job.
That's most of the job.
That's most of the job. Yeah.
That's most of the job. And
but yeah,
I mean, I like people, but I don't. It's like even now leading this boot camp, I'm like, oh my god, but I don't like people. What am I doing? So anyway, that's why I started the boot camp.
That's really amazing. I think like from what you were saying, you brought up like certain points that just came to my head. Like, I think for both groups, like you're people that want to have another skill, people that want that second chance, people that may not have formal education but want to learn something else, and the group that like was kind of confined to taking MATLAB, taking certain classes. Tandon has like 50 like requirements that you can't even like study abroad. So I think it kind of like reveals like kind of like a flaw in higher education where you have one set of people where they can't afford that like 70K. I don't even know how much NYU is now. 80K. It's probably like I don't know. It's a lot. That people that don't have the resources to spend that money or take out loans to get like the MATLAB classes, to take the Java classes. And then you have folks that were so structured in this like made up curriculum that someone in the higher up said, well, this is what you need to do to be a successful engineer. You know what I mean? I think like your class is providing a sense of accessibility for anybody who wants to learn Python, who wants to, either like you said, freelance or, find another job that because they don't like the job that they're in. And I think that's so important when it comes to STEM accessibility because clearly, as we see, not everyone has that access to it. So, like, the fact that you're running this boot camp for free, like, you're not even, you're like for free, all volunteering basis, and from home, like, and this is done through an accessible means. So, it's just really interesting to see how STEM education can go beyond the walls of the classroom, can go beyond the walls of getting a BS or an MS, and you can see it, go into different ways. And I think that's the beauty of STEM, and especially with coding, learning Python, learning Java, it's flexible. Anyone can learn it, I think, and I think that's the beauty of this field, as opposed to like other fields where like it's not as accessible. This is a field where I had like my other podcast. I don't know if you saw my other podcast. I'm out here acting like I'm like MSNBC, like I'm on the podcast. The other episode, the other episode I just did, I spoke with a friend who was a podcaster, and we spoke about media becoming the new frontier for a lot of jobs. And what goes into media? Coding, right? Coding for the apps to make the TikTok, coding for the apps to make these websites, or coding to make YouTube videos and things like that. Whether it's like basic HTML or CSS, or like using programs to create is also very important. And talking about that, like the importance of especially communities of color learning this skill. Like, okay, this is it. Let's make our own media. Let's take control of of these skills that we can create and cultivate wealth in our community, like cultivate, our own, take back our own, like, if that, it's not making any sense here. I don't know, but I'm rambling.
No,
But yeah,
no, this is perfect. It's true. It's true. I mean, honestly, yeah, we started off and we list my credentials, and I'm very proud of being successful in that way. But it's sometimes I feel bad having so much success, and there's so many people that just didn't get as lucky, like either genetically or circumstantially or something. They just had parents that weren't there. And I just won the lottery just because I had parents that were there. And I've always felt like, if you can be a parent to somebody in the future, like give somebody the skills that your parents gave you in the form of, your client. If you have a client and you're an attorney, so if you have a client and you have to, it's sort of like everything kind of becomes like parenting teaching. Like when you're doing things, right? When you're showing someone how to do something, or you're getting someone through something, or you're a leader, you have to calm somebody down. And there's a mix of psychology and parenting involved, sort of. So all I'm trying to say is, like, I always wanted to give people the kind of guidance, discipline that I was given to be able to have this amazing life. It's only because I was very, very disciplined. I came from a very, very disciplined place. And some people just didn't have that discipline, had that discipline and like took advantage of it, like didn't listen. But it's like, being successful is, I think it's a combination of your upbringing, definitely, and what you do with that upbringing when you're out of the house. So
yeah, and I think I don't think like you were saying like, oh, you feel bad for having like certain privileges and things like. But I also feel like the fact that you're even giving back, I think there's like a difference. I think like, I think everyone comes with some sort of privilege, like even I myself, I recognize law degree wasn't just because like pure grit that I like work hard, but obviously like I had structurally and certain things that behind the scenes that did allow me to pursue a law degree. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. And like, but I think the difference is that you're using what you've had the privilege to do, which is like attend all these schools, but you're giving back in some way. And if that makes any sense, like it's like there's one thing of like just accumulating skills and accumulating privilege for yourself, But there's another thing of getting that privilege, and then like once you get there, you just sit there, and then people that get there and then actually do something about it. If that makes any sense, I think like I definitely relate to that. Where it's like for me, I'm very lucky and very privileged where yes, like I've had to struggle in my own way and I've had my share of experiences, but I did like I grew up in downtown Brooklyn. This is like a very I mean like it's not it's an area with resources, right? It's an area that is safe. It's an area that's accessible to transportation. It's an area where I have privilege by living in the neighborhood that I'm living in, right? And like I've had certain experiences that have allowed me to get my law degree in a much easier way as opposed to a lot of folks that are out there. But there's one thing of like having privilege and not doing anything about it, and having privilege and giving back in some way. And I think that's like the thing. It's like, yes, it's like, I don't want to knock down like, oh, like, don't feel guilt. Like, I don't want to knock down, like, your feelings are valid. And I hope I'm not coming off that like,
No,
oh, like, but it's like more of like, I get it, but like, you're doing something about it. You're like, you're creating a resource for folks who don't have that privilege. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think there's a difference between accumulating privilege for yourself, staying there, doing nothing about it, and then there are people that do have privilege and then are actually trying to better the world behind that, if that makes any sense. Like, so I mean, not behind it, like better the world, like better, like leaving behind the world. That's what I'm trying to say. Oh my god, that's what I'm trying to say. Leaving behind a world that is better than what they came into.
That's right. And you have
Mm-hmm.
we have to assume the position of being leaders. It's very
Yeah,
difficult. It's
yeah,
very difficult. Like what you're
yeah.
doing right now with the rooftop conversations is a form of leadership, and it's uniting. It's creating conversations with individuals,
Mm-hmm.
getting information out there.
Definitely.
It's
Mm-hmm.
work. You have to organize. You have to be this CFO,
Yeah.
CEO, ABCD.
I,
So you have to be all of it
yeah.
while you're
Yeah.
starting, right? But that's
Yep.
the leader thing,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
we have to lead. We need
Yeah.
more leaders and people that are
Mm.
willing to be like, okay, I see that this is an issue. It's really weird that we have this large gap in education. First of all,
Yeah.
always weird, but of course, there's a relationship between poverty and the education gap.
Yeah.
Of
Mm-hmm.
course. So it's like, what can I do to make society as level as possible,
Mm-hmm.
and then act based off
Yeah.
of credentials, based off of your privilege. What can you do to bring it from like this to where everybody is at least, you can't save the world, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. Trust me. I feel like.
I'm like, what can you do to bring it all? I mean,
Yeah.
but one thing, Python boot camp, show someone how to do something, teach, share knowledge.
Yeah.
Because then otherwise you're just like living a material. The only thing left is to just be material,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise you're just
Yeah.
going to make money as a lawyer and spend it.
Yeah. And like I think, like you said, no, like material. That's another thing too. Like I think as I'm getting older, material things like it doesn't impress me anymore. You know what I mean? Like it's not something where like it doesn't. I'm not judging people that do, like people that find comfort or happiness in like a new Chanel bag or a new like Yeezy shoes or whatever. But I think for me personally, I think I've always been like this. I don't know if it comes from like my upbringing as like an immigrant child, like a child of immigrants, where like it's always giving back, or whether it came from like being raised in the Christian faith, or that you have that like I want to give back, I want to give back. But for me, I never really wanted to pursue a career that like made. I mean, yes, My mom taught me this: like be financially comfortable, be able to pay bills, be able to create that wealth, but also give back. Like it's not going to sustain you just to take, like you said, to take. You gotta give them back. You gotta be able to. So I chose my career like literally like what can I do that will allow me to be financially stable? Yes, because bills gotta get paid. But what's gonna allow me to, like you said, I'm one person. I don't think I can solve every world problem, but at least contribute to solving something in some way. Whether that's through my professional work or whether that's through even something like this, like where I'm having a show on Instagram Live. I'm not getting compensation for now. I'm not getting fame, if anything. Like I got 400 followers. I think like my mom, my best friend, and like a couple of people are watching this. But even if like 3 people are watching it, ideas are getting spread out there, right? With conversating with you, conversating with I'm having a bunch of diverse people who are not like me from different backgrounds, professions, and we're having this discussion. And I think like this is one way to like spread that knowledge and spread that materiality. So if I'm going to segue to another question, you're using media in a way to also do this to present an idea. And I know like last year you did something called the gratitude journal, and if you can speak a little bit about that in some aspect and like your inspiration to start this project.
Sure. So yeah, I've been using social media in a very dull way. I haven't really been trying much. And
Really, I feel like you're giving really good content, like your
I
stories.
know
Like,
I haven't been doing like the aggressive social thing. Like I'll do a story and then whatever. But like I've pretty much been. I made 2 LinkedIn posts, and that was pretty much how this kind of took off too. And it was LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I think people are like, yeah, LinkedIn is where the secret is. LinkedIn can help you. I've tried using LinkedIn for get jobs, didn't work. I was like, LinkedIn is a joke. It'll never
it
work.
is. Thank you. Oh my god, I'm the only one. I hate LinkedIn. Thank you. Okay.
LinkedIn, I'm like, really?
The only one.
If you got a job on LinkedIn, I mean, get me that job. Because I'm like, how did you get a job through LinkedIn? I don't know. But LinkedIn is good for people actually post things on LinkedIn. I didn't know this like very well, but there's like a feed. It's like Facebook, except it's business. So people go on there and everyone knows we're here to talk business or professional, something professional. It's not like here's my cat, right? It's professional. So I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll go find some professionals and use LinkedIn to do it. And lo and behold, professionals, undergraduates, graduates, postdocs signing up for this boot camp just because they saw it on LinkedIn. So that might be something if anybody's like wants to use LinkedIn. If you're doing something professional or you're trying to get professionals either like on the show, like in this conversation, LinkedIn, they're there and they want to spend the time. In terms of the gratitude journal, yeah, I started the gratitude journal last November. I made this gratitude journal. It is a website that is focused on gratitude and articles of gratitude, so stories of gratitude. So I was doing sort of what you're doing now, and I had to put the project on hold just because it's a lot of work to try and find stories. Like it's really like what you're doing. Like
I know it's a lot.
How people don't want to talk about their.
Oh God.
They're like, yeah, because pretty much the gratitude journal was I was and am interviewing people to find their stories of gratitude. So usually a story of gratitude, something has happened, like you lost your job, your child passed away, something, right? And it's such a vulnerable people. So I don't know if I want to talk about my story of gratitude, but like that means I'm going to have to think about my son and it's like, it's tough. You'd think it'd be easy that people just say thank you. But once I told people like, what's your story? Like, are you willing to share what happened? Not just like, I'm really grateful that I have good health and, I graduated NYU and it was like, I have really nice parents and it's like, no, like, what happened and what do you want to share with people that maybe went through similar situation to get through it? But that's so vulnerable. And that's when I realized I'm having a hard time getting people to talk.
Yeah, no, actually that was my concern with this project too, because I struggle. So I think I'm growing up Thai, growing up Asian, vulnerability feelings, that's something we don't talk about. We like brush it on the rug and move on with our day. And I think as I'm getting older, like I was always taught, like be tough, like hide your feelings, push it off, brush it to the side, keep going. But as I got older, especially as someone who like did go through trauma of like bullying, going through trauma of being like a fat woman in a very fat phobic society, there are stories where I have to be vulnerable, but I've noticed that like even just like me posting on Instagram, whether it's like through my various outfits or me, I don't know, God knows what I put on Instagram these days. But even just that, like I've shown like there's a representation there. You know, there's representation, like you said, someone to connect with your story. You're not alone. You're like, you feel a little less alone when you know that there's someone else out there who's been through the same thing. Like when I didn't think my law school journey really was an impact. Like I was just posting to post for the sake of likes or whatever people do these days for like clout or whatever. But like I didn't know there was an impact when I graduated law school, when I passed the bar, when I was sworn in, people were coming to me and like saying, "Hey, I've been following your journey since day one. You've really inspired me." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" Because all I did was like look pretty at school. Like I was like, I would look pretty at school, not do anything, but just even those posts, like I'm creating my own representation. Like I'm a fat Thai woman who's a child of immigrants who became a lawyer, and that's a story to tell through just even pictures and being that representation. And I think there's beauty in vulnerability. And I think what you're doing with Gratitude Project, it's hard. It's really hard. We're in a society where like it's hard because even with this, I'm like trying to look like, oh, there's a lot of I know a lot of great people in my there's really interesting people in my life, but is anyone willing to sit down with me for 30, 40 minutes to talk about their story? And it's, to like talk about it, just maybe someone out there will relate to you and what you've done. And but I mean, I'm having an easy for so far. I've had a couple people that are like, "Oh, I want to come on the show," but then there's other people who are like, "I don't know, I'm a little shy. I don't know, I don't know how I'm gonna like go with it. Do you think I'm good enough to be?" It's like that imposter syndrome. Like, am I good enough to even share my story? Like, what gives me that authority to share my story? You know what I mean? And things like that.
But it doesn't. It's everybody thinks that there's so much on the line, but really there isn't. And like those
Yeah.
you're able to just do what other people maybe aren't doing. Like I'm sure there's plenty of people that want to start a gratitude journal, that want to start the Python bootcamp and help, but they don't. Like those things require vulnerability. Like this rooftop conversation, it's your project of personal vulnerability because you have to be vulnerable in order to reach out to people, to connect people, to want to do this. It's a lot. And it's not.
And it's like the vulnerability of failing, like knowing that like you could, whatever that word may mean, like failing, like having to take that risk, it requires a sense of vulnerability. You know,
hard. And it doesn't really matter, even if this goes somewhere to the moon or nowhere down to nothing. You're trying, and that's what I recognized with the gratitude journal. I was like, this did not work out. It was a really good idea. I'll pick it back up. I own the domain. Okay. I have the website, I have the Instagram already there. Maybe I'll pick it back up when I have enough time to hunt for people that want to do this. Because otherwise it will take too long. If I'm trying to publish a story a week, I need to spend 4 days finding someone, make sure that they don't flake. But what if I just spend, 2 months gathering content, and then I have 2 months worth of content, and then I can just type those stories, 2 months interviewing. And then you have, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But sorry. You're fine. But anyway, so that was the most frustrating part about the gratitude journal. Not that I see it as a failing, but I do see it as something that required a lot more immediate diligence and patience than I had the time for. Versus Python bootcamp. Python is what I do for money. I am a coder, so I don't have to also. There's no process of there's not a deep process of building trust because I have degrees. I went to I worked for these places, so people can just look on LinkedIn and they'll be like, sure, I'll learn Python from you. You look like you know what you're doing. There's not a lot of please join negotiation. It's versus trying to find someone to interview for the gratitude journal. It was don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. Kind of calming down. This is fine. You can talk to me. Everything's going to be fine. Yes, it's going to go on the internet. And then they're like, wait a minute. It's going to be on the internet? Yeah,
I know.
Of course it's going to go on the internet. Where else would it go? So,
Yeah, definitely.
anyways, yeah,
But but I think that's like a great idea for you to even start. You know what I mean? Like, I think like just starting is always the hardest part. Like, I've been talking to my coworkers for a bit, like, oh, I potentially want to do something in media, like whether it's a YouTube, a podcast, a blog, or something. But like, it really took like me doing that first step. Like, even last week when I filmed my first episode, I'm like, do I really want to do this? Is this going to be a thing? And then like, but after taking that first step, I'm like, wait, I actually enjoy doing this. Like, this is actually kind of fun. Regardless of like whatever comes out from it, I'm enjoying catching up with, like, I haven't seen you in like what, five years now? I haven't seen you in a while. And the fact that we're like having a full blown conversation, it's it's allowing us to like reconnect. It's allowing me to reconnect with a bunch of people in my life and getting to know so much more about you and what the last like 45 minutes we spent together, you know?
exactly.
So, so Neo, our time's like wrapping up and like, I don't want to hold you up for too long. But before we end, this is like your self promotion time because this is the space I'm going to offer you to just like, say thank you, show my gratitude. If you want to, drop Instagram handles, how to apply for your Python boot camp, or like, this is your self promotion time.
Sure, yeah. I mean, if you guys want to follow me on Instagram, that'd be fine. My Instagram is at neo hydroxide. So hydroxide, like sodium, hydroxide. Or
I'll put it on the bio so they
how
can
they can
they can
spell
type
it.
it.
Neo and neo hydroxide. And yeah, if anybody's interested in joining the Python boot camp, where we are learning how to code in Python, it's completely structured. I've created a syllabus for it. There's homework to keep us accountable. There will be some sort of project or like exams throughout the Python bootcamp itself. Everything is non-graded, so I will be giving feedback, but it's non-graded feedback. It's just like, why don't you try this as a suggestion, to make your code better. So it's not the classical pressure of the traditional American classroom anyways. It's people from all walks of life. There's a beginner's class and an advanced beginner's class. It's based on, where you're at mathematically. And yeah, all are welcome. You don't have to have a college degree to join. You don't need a high school degree to join. You can join us by you can contact me on Instagram and I'll put you in the class. That would be great.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, definitely. I will definitely link that all in like the video description for everyone to see. If you're interested in joining Neo's class, please contact her and all the information will be down below. Neo, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. We literally I was looking at the time like, oh my God, wait, we gotta go. But thank you so much for being on the show. You are such a role model to myself, and I'm sure once other people hear this podcast, they'll think the same. And thank you, Neo. Like, I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, of course. I'm so happy to support and to be here, and it's great seeing you. And we're neighbors, which is crazy.
We're neighbors. I was quarantined. I'll come over.
I know, right? I mean, like that, but like that's my building. My building.
All right, Neo. Take care, and I hope everything goes well during this time.
Oh, thanks, me. I'll talk to you soon.